Welcome everyone to our second Lunch and Learn of 2022. Everyone should be muted as you join the webinar. I'm sure everyone's getting used to Zoom now, but just a few tips to make this a little more enjoyable. Please stay on mute until the end of the presentation when I think I can open it up and unmute you for questions. There's also a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen that you can use to submit questions during the presentation. That would be very helpful. As you think of them, please enter them. We are recording this session and we will share the link and the slides with you after. Everyone who signed up will get a copy. So thank you very much for joining us today to learn about a software system that aids in the complicated job of managing residual materials. I read an abstract about this ORCHID system, and after I did, I invited Erica from RMI, which is an awesome NEBRA member, to do this lunch and learn, because I think NEBRA members will be interested in this. So I'm very pleased to have not only Erica Reed, but also April Sargent with us, a couple of our YP members here to talk about ORCHID and how they use it. Erica graduated from Plymouth State University with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science. While she was in college, she spent 2 summers as an intern with NUIPIC as their youth and environment coordinator. Small world. She's been with RMI since 2016, working as a project assistant for their compliance and marketing departments. And she's currently the lead dispatcher for RMI's fleet of tractor trailers. And she's also a board member with NEBRA. And April Sargent is actually a former RMI employee who has moved on to other ventures, but she's continuing to serve as RMI's compliance consultant. She had played a crucial role in developing this software and continues to use it every day. She spent more than 10 years working with various businesses in their compliance departments. And while she's no longer with RMI, she is a valuable resource RMI leans on all the time for compliance related topics, and she jumped in today to help Erica. So welcome, April. And with that, I would ask you guys to go ahead and you can start sharing your screen and take it away. We're very excited to learn about ORCHID.
All right, thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate you joining our lunch and learn today. We're going to spend the next hour or so talking about a proprietary software that RMI developed specifically to manage our residuals recycling program. It's called ORCHID, and April and I will get going. So resource management, some of you might know who we are, some of you might not. We're based in Holderness, New Hampshire, and we're an organic residuals recycling company that services pretty much all of New England, parts of New York, and a little bit of Connecticut and Rhode Island. We've been in business for about 28 years, and right now we employ about 30 people. And that ranges between agronomists, compliance specialists, field technicians who soil sample or spread our material with our spreaders that we rent out. We also have our own fleet of truck drivers, and right now we have 8 tractor trailers that service all of our customers. We have an operations department who works on maintaining and keeping our equipment up to date and compliant. And we have sales and project managers who specialize on bringing in new business as far as our generators and our end users. Annually, we recycle 350,000 cubic yards of organic residuals. Our materials are biosolids, wood ash, short paper fiber, and hydrosolids. We do some brewery perlite also in the state of New Hampshire, and we do food grade gelatin and compost. Our main goal is to find a use for any material that could be beneficially reused. We try and avoid landfilling at all costs. So if it's an organic residual from a municipal or an industrial process, we try and find a beneficial use for it. This, we were just talking about COVID, is actually our last company picture that we were able to take, and it was in 2019. So it's funny to think that this was the last time our entire company has been together. As I mentioned, we manage a variety of different materials. Our main materials are biosolids, paper fiber, and wood ash from all over New England. Most of you know residuals are the byproducts from municipal and industrial processes. And some of them have features that are good for beneficial reuse. Our main programs are land application for fertilizers and soil amendments on farm fields. We also deal with reclamation, which is a combination of taking all of those materials and combining them with loam or topsoil. And then we land apply that and do reclaim on landfills or recently stumped plots of land. We also deal with paper fiber bedding, which we use on farms as a bedding material underneath cows. And then we've started dealing with some compost coming out of Canada that's leaf and yard waste. All of the materials that we manage are regulated and tested on an annual and monthly basis even. So it's a little bit different. We don't normally deal with material that isn't regulated, so we're not dealing with bark mulch or anything along those lines. All of our materials are tested to state and federal regulations. This is a nice picture that shows our current scope for RMI. All of these little stars are different generators that we're currently servicing throughout all of New England. As you can see, we have a pretty large territory. We have 8 tractor trailers that are spaced strategically to help service these customers in a beneficial way for all of them. And then we also have sales teams, which are remote. So we have 4 different sales reps that are scattered throughout New England who all focus on a different area and a different material. So that way we're able to better service our generators and our end users by finding them the product at the best price that's the closest to them. And us here, April and I, we're located in our central Holderness, New Hampshire office, which is right around here. So we are pretty centrally located to our entire territory. So background on ORCHID. ORCHID stands for an Organic Residuals Characteristics Information Database. RMI has been in business since 1994, and the 3 owners, Sheila Connolly, Marty Reese, and Charlie Hansen, realized that they needed a software that was going to be able to grow and change with their business as they were growing. When they worked for a company called Resource Conservation Services, they had a form of a database like this, but as Sheila said, it's kind of like a glorified spreadsheet. So it wasn't able to do everything that they were envisioning. When they were starting out, RMI was looking to their friends and local resources to try and help them come out with a new database that could help them as they grew as a company. They worked with a local grad from Plymouth State and a good friend of theirs, Dave Sleeper, who actually helped them launch the first ORCHID platform in 1995. That platform then went through several different iterations with their friend Allison McCormick, who used to be a pretty big wig down on State Street for the banks, and she wanted a change in pace and decided to retire. And for the next 25 plus years, she helped build and maintain ORCHID for RMI. Allison was a huge piece in everything that ORCHID was for RMI, and if there were any issues or if they needed updates or anything like that, Allison was their main point of contact. And she was actually the one who had told RMI that our original ORCHID database was starting to fail and they were going to need to make some changes in the next couple of years because the Access database that it was on was slowly becoming out of date. So Allison also helped us transition from the old ORCHID to the new ORCHID, and she was a big role in us getting our current ORCHID up to date and functioning on a safe platform that wasn't going to be having any issues going forward. And this is just a funny picture. This was the first outline that they had created for ORCHID in July of 1994, and still to this day, it is very similar to this identical outline that Marty, Charlie, and Sheila had come up with in '94. And I just thought this was a funny picture to include because this actually used to be a computer, which I had never seen that before. So it was funny to see how much we've grown as far as software and where we are now. So as I mentioned, back in 2016, 2017, Allison started mentioning that the software or the platform that ORCHID was on, Microsoft Access Database, was beginning to fail. And at some point, RMI was going to have to make a decision, and they were going to have to invest in upgrading the ORCHID database. So we realized that that was something we needed to really put at the forefront of our business, and we set out to find a company that would be able to help us get over that hurdle and get ORCHID onto a more secure database. So RMI owners spent a couple months meeting with different technology groups to find the right fit, and they eventually did with Treehouse Technology Group based down in Massachusetts, but they've got people all over the United States, and they're actually on the call today, which is great to see them here. Thanks for joining, Chad. And unfortunately, it wasn't as easy as just copying and pasting the old ORCHID onto a new platform. We had to spend months outlining exactly what we needed and recreating all the workflows that ORCHID had been doing for us for 20 plus years in order to get it over to the new database. But after 2.5, 3 years of development, ORCHID 2.0, as we like to call it, was finalized and ready for use. ORCHID is now a cloud-based database and can be used by all RMI employees, including office and field staff. Before, you could really only access ORCHID if you were in the office. And now that it's cloud-based, you can have it on your cell phone, your tablet, you can get it from home. So it's much more user-friendly than it used to be. And a nice piece about ORCHID is that it can interface with other software platforms. So we have a customer relation database called Salesforce, and the information can go from ORCHID to Salesforce to update our sales reps on delivery details and any other information that might be happening in ORCHID. So it's nice that it can go to other databases. It can also be integrated to go with an accounting software or anything else, really. That's the nice thing about ORCHID is you can kind of tweak it and change it to do whatever you need it to do to make your life a little bit easier. And one of the big reasons why we decided to change ORCHID was because Allison had said that it was starting to fail and she really wasn't going to be able to take it to that next step. So the biggest hurdle was us finding a company that could work for us. And as I mentioned, we found a company down in Massachusetts called Treehouse Technology Group, and they really went above and beyond to really understand who RMI was as a business. And I have a little clip that they did for us back in 2018 when we started this process with them. So watch that real quick.
At Treehouse Technology.
I'm not hearing it, Erica.
You're not hearing it, Janine?
Just at the beginning and then it stopped.
Oh, okay. So I just think that's a great video to show how invested Treehouse was in getting to understand who RMI was as a company and what we really needed from them. So we spent 3-4 years working with TTG to get this orchid where it is now. And they were huge, obviously, resources for us, figuring out exactly what we needed to do and how they could help us get there. So that was a challenge that we were able to overcome. And still to this day, we're working with TTG and trying to find the next phase forward with ORCHID 2.0. Another challenge we faced while rolling out this new software was being able to articulate what we actually needed from ORCHID. When you get used to working in a database day after day for 5-10 years, you kind of forget all the nuances that go into what makes that database function. So having all of us sit around a conference table and outlining exactly what we needed was a challenge. We actually spent a couple weeks taking sticky notes and putting them up on the wall and doing a workflow to say, okay, so sales needs this and accounting needs this and operations needs this. And that was kind of how we built and developed the ORCHID that we're using today. So it was really a collaborative effort to try and outline and remember exactly what it was that we needed. And that goes along with the remembering what were all the background calculations ORCHID was doing, all the record keeping, all the reports we had generated that we used on a daily and a weekly basis. So it was an interesting feat to take on, trying to remember exactly what ORCHID did.
All right, so I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about what ORCHID actually does for RMI, which is obviously very important to our day-to-day operations. So ORCHID, the first thing it does is it tracks our work orders, how much material is delivered to each site in each field. And these work orders come from our sales reps generating an end user with a need and a material to satisfy that need and reaching out to the office. And then that's when the work order process really starts. So after the work order has been created and placed, and Erica will go over that a little bit later, dispatching happens. So that is getting the material from the generator or the source to that customer on the other side. Now, coming from compliance, the next one I think is one of the most important functions of ORCHID is material analysis. So as Erica mentioned, and you kind of saw our generator map, we're working with lots of different materials in lots of different states with lots of different rules. So the material analysis helps me track compliance and making sure that everything we are delivering and storing meets all the requirements for the state and the material that it is. Soil analysis is next. This one is really nice. It's on a site level. So this helps us track nutrient needs for the agronomists to figure out how much material for what crop is going to be delivered. Annual reporting, this is for federal reporting, state reporting, generator reporting, site reporting, all incredibly important. And if we didn't have a database or a system in place, would be incredibly time consuming. Daily reporting, this really helps us, making sure that our billing is accurate, our operations are flowing. It helps point out any outliers, identifying any issues we might need to work through. And it also helps us kind of pick up on some trends to think about and talk about as a team. All of this information pushes to our accounting software so that our accounting team can bill it out. And as Erica mentioned before, it pushes to our Salesforce, which really is our customer relations management software. So our sales reps in the fields have real-time information about when loads are being delivered, work orders are being completed. And this is kind of just a really nice diagram to show how ORCHID touches every aspect of RMI's business. So if you start at the top, accounting, we just talked about that. Compliance, and that is for materials and for sites, for generators, for end users. Dispatch, making sure our fleet is getting where it needs to go, getting to the correct stockpiles. Our sales team, it has customer information and it pushes to the software that they have the most ease using. The field team, it lets us know when we need to soil sample, who needs to soil sample, as well as generating spread reports so that they know at what rate to spread the material on what acreage. And upper management really uses this at as looking at key indicators of how the business is doing. Here's a workflow. This is like when Erica mentioned, we put on sticky notes. Obviously, there's many sticky notes for every stage, but we're starting with the opportunity from the CRM that is generated by the salesperson. That then gets translated into an actionable work order and an agronomic recommendation. So the work order is telling us where are we picking up the material, where it's going, and it's based off of an agronomic recommendation from our agronomist that looks at soil samples, nutrients in the materials, and the acreage to figure out how much per acre is going to land on the field it's going for. Once we know how much and where, it goes to dispatch. So dispatch can tell the trucks where to go. We're also getting delivery records back in return that have, how long did the trip take? How many miles was it? And the weight of the material delivered so that we can have accurate records in our system. All of that gets entered in the data entry phase, and then it goes to billing. I think there's a few more sections after this really that would go to kind of the compliance stuff that is related to reporting.
And then as April said, the work order really is the hub for all the information that our truck drivers will need or our accounting department, and it all comes from our out on the road sales team. So the work orders contain the correct site name that we're delivering to, the contact information, it needs phone numbers and primary contact, what product we're delivering, whether it's wood ash, biosolids, or paper fiber, because that'll tell the agronomist something different if they need to look a little bit further and find a soil result. It also outlines the price that customer will be paying and if there's any discounts associated with it. It'll say the quantity, if they're getting 1 load or 25 loads. Then it'll go a little bit deeper into the information as far as the fields and how many different fields are going to be land applied on, and then also the crop type associated with those fields. And each of those fields has an associated acreage, and that's what the agronomist will use to determine how much material those fields can actually utilize. So our agronomist is always looking at the fields, the crop type, the acreage, and the soil results to determine if that field really could use 3 loads. And if the nutrients are a little light, maybe they could do an extra load. So that's where the agronomist really comes into these work order pieces. And then the stockpile is very important for the delivery aspect and the dispatch stage, because that is what our drivers base their delivery directions off of. So with correct stockpile information and directions, our drivers can make sure that they're going to the right spot and they're delivering in the right location. So as compliance wise, we always need to be cautious that we're putting it in the right spot depending on what material it is. So our drivers are really good at determining, oh, I'm kind of close to this stream here. Maybe I should reread the directions and I have to be on the other side of the field. So those are huge parts that all come from these work orders that our sales team generates for us. And this picture right here is a snippet from ORCHID of a work order report where it's taking all that information and making it viewable for anyone else to see. So this would be what our office team sees as site information, contact, phone number, what material he's getting, how much, the price, stockpile information, and then the ag rec. And then this shows you, once the deliveries are done, it shows you how much material was actually delivered to this one work order. So these really are the center of everything that kind of allows us to deliver where we need to go. So these are huge as far as information being correct and up to date.
All right, and here is a snapshot of the agronomic recommendation. You can see, do I have what else I do? Here is the site information, the manager, and the date. Here, like Erica said, all this information pulls off of the work order, and then the agronomist determines based off information within the work order what the agronomic recommendation is. So you can see the field information, how large that field is, what product they're looking for, what crop is growing, what the recommended rate is as far as yards per acre for spreading, and then tons per acre for application rate. So this helps for delivery amounts and when you're doing physical spreading and calibrating the spreader. And then here's your total. So these get sent to the customer so that they know exactly what nutrients they're getting. And all the nutrient information we'll learn a little bit later on comes from routine material analysis. So we always know that we have up-to-date information that reflects the actual product landing on the field.
So dispatch is also a huge part of ORCHID, and it was nice when we were creating this new ORCHID. I was the lead dispatcher, so I got to pretty much create what I wanted as a dispatcher for ORCHID. So that's been nice for me to be able to personalize what we're currently using for our dispatch system. In concert with our ORCHID database, we also have the system called eRoad, and that is how we track all of our trucks daily and almost to the minute movements. So this picture right here is a snapshot of what I'm looking at on a daily basis. This is a list of all of our current trucks, and it tells me where they're located. So these are called geofences, and I can see where our drivers are at any given minute. And this is great for if they're stuck in a field, or if they have no cell phone service, or if they're broke down on the road. I can click on their truck number and I can immediately find where they are and help them get out of the situation that they're in. This also is our federal motor carrier compliance database. Truck drivers are required to have electronic delivery records for the federal motor carrier, and our eRoad database does all that tracking for the truck drivers. So this is a huge piece that makes dispatch efficient. And another aspect that makes it efficient is the way we dispatch in ORCHID. And I'll get to the layout of that in a second. But the ORCHID database creates a ticket for all of our drivers, and they're required to fill in time, miles, weight for all the loads, yardage, and they have to submit the weight ticket for each of those delivery records. So these delivery records are a crucial part for RMI's business, because these are really our on the ground confirmation that that material went to that site. And we have the time and the miles and the weight, and that is what runs all of our billing. So we bill our generators, our end users, off of everything that our truck drivers are writing down on these delivery records. Once their delivery is done, they turn these tickets in, and we do data entry inside ORCHID. And this is the dispatch scheduling view that we currently use for scheduling all of our trucks. We have different stages depending on what status the ticket is right now. Scratch pad is where I know in a couple days one of our generators is going to need a pickup, but I don't know which driver is going to do it or what site it's going to go to. Scheduled is scheduled incentive drivers. The truck drivers are actually physically doing these deliveries right now. Once they do the deliveries, we get them back in the system and we do our data entry, and they go through these two phases. And then we do a final data check to make sure that everything is entered correctly and there's no issues for billing or anything like that. And then they get slotted into invoice ready. And that means that billing is able to now occur, and we can work through the whole second billing and data check cycle to make sure that what we're invoicing our generators and our end users is accurate.
All right, now we're going to get a little bit into the compliance segments of ORCHID. The compliance, the structure for compliance throughout ORCHID and throughout RMI is really all encompassing of all our business operations. So you can see here the site history. So every single site that we're delivering a material to is going to have all the historical information maintained. And if it's a permitted site, it's going to have permit tracking in that module. So it lets me know when it's set to renew, when it's set to expire, the permit number, all of that good stuff. Cumulative metals loading, something I didn't get super in depth in this presentation. But essentially every site for any regulated material, Class B especially, the metals in the material as it's spread has to be calculated over the history of the site. And there are regulatory limits you cannot exceed. So every year we run reports based off of the metals content of the materials that have been delivered and the permitted acreage to make sure that all of the compliance pieces are being met, and that report gets exported to regulatory agencies. The other site-specific compliance piece that ORCHID does is it generates site spreading reports. So these are physical paper reports that we can give to our field crew to tell them exactly, mostly generated off of the agronomic recommendation, how many yards per acre is being spread of what material. They know how the quantities of each material on the field and what stockpile they're pulling from. And then those get filled out and completed so that we can do a virtual spread within the system, which is another aspect I'm not going to get super heavy into, but we can, in ORCHID, spread the material that eventually calculates the cumulative metal loading. Generator level compliance. So this is really compliance of the materials being generated. All the materials that we manage go through some sort of regulatory process, which usually has an analysis aspect to it. Some of our materials we're testing every month, some we're testing once a year, but all of that data gets dragged and dropped into ORCHID so that all the background calculations that we've talked about so far can happen. The other aspect of compliance on the generator level in ORCHID is permit tracking. So again, on the generator tab, it tells you what permits they hold, contact information, and when those permits are, when they went into effect and when they're expiring. There is a ton of reporting in ORCHID that we can do. Most of these reports have been generated from one need or another and have just accumulated over the 20 years we've been doing this. But it encompasses state reporting, federal reporting, generator reporting, and site reporting. And the last piece of compliance is that nutrient planning and management. So making sure that our agronomists have all of the information that they need to make sure that the proper amount of nutrients are being put down on the appropriate sites. So here's just a really cute picture of a dog, first of all. That's Marty's dog, Mookie. But this is an overview of compliance at the site level. So at the bottom down here, this picture is a screenshot from one of the ORCHID screens that shows what different options you have for tracking data at the site level. So we have addresses, contacts, fields, which are very important. Like Erica said, those are populated on the work order. So we know what field it's going to, how much acreage that field has for a particular material, because acreage changes based on material and based off of setbacks that are regulatory. It shows all of the stockpiles, and this is not just current stockpiles, but historical stockpiles as well. You can click on the work orders tab and it shows any work order for the history of the site, permit information for the site, and then this tab houses any soil analysis. So any routine nutrient soil sampling, cumulative or metal sampling for cumulative metals, or if a site is required to have groundwater analysis, that data lives here as well. At the generator level, this has a tab for operational details. So we know, Erica will know what hours can our trucks get in? Are there restrictions on the size of trucks that can get in? You know, can it only accommodate a roll off and someone that comes with a big tractor trailer? Are they going to have to turn around and leave? It has contact information for people on management level, anyone who might have any contact with our drivers, and the person that is most typical to call to tell Erica, hey, our trailer's getting full, we need to pick up. And then the last tab is indicators, and that really shows us how much material we're picking up on how routine of a basis and what the loads are weighing. But you can see here on the materials tab, again, compliance feels this is really important. Some of our generators make multiple materials that we have to manage. So all the materials are here. It shows what type of process it goes through. And there's some residual nitrogen calculations that happen in the background. This is the material analysis page. This would list all of the lab reports and lab results that we've had over the history of working with the generator. And permit details, again, does it have an AOS or an SQC? And what type of reporting is required, what type of analysis is required, and the date ranges for renewals and expirations. Material analysis, again, I'll emphasize because obviously this gets me very excited. Material analysis. So there are some things that old ORCHID could do that ORCHID 2.0 really does a lot better. So down here, you can see this is where when I get a lab result from a lab, I can enter this material. So what generator, what material, what lab, what type of results was it, and any internal notes, the sample date, and then all I have to do is drag and drop the Excel spreadsheet. And then it auto imports into our system. And what I get out is the spreadsheet that you can see in the back. And what this does, it has all of the analytes or compounds. You can select what type of result you want. So my upper limit here is for wood ash. And I have set a standard, which is what I call the lowest common denominator. So the lowest common denominator for any of our regulations we fall under are populated here. And if the result is green, it meets the standard. If it was the same as the standard, it would be yellow. And if it exceeded the standard, it would be red. And this is really helpful to make sure that you're not missing any exceedances, because we look at a lot of lab data on a daily basis, and it could be human error to miss a standard. But this ensures that it doesn't happen. It auto-populates, and if they're all green, you know you've met all your standards, you're good to go. That's another really nice thing about ORCHID is it's really easy and it's really scalable. There is a function called just data maintenance where you can go in, and if all of a sudden you have to test for PFAS compounds, you can add in all your PFAS compounds as analytes. If there are limits, you can set your limits and you're good to go. So it's really scalable for any future testing and method needs. Reports, like I said, there is a boatload of reports that we've come up with throughout the years, and all have a very specific purpose. Some have way more than one purpose. Here's just a screenshot of some of the reports that we have. I won't get into all the details, but they are, reports that I can say, I want to know that where this type of material went. And if a town establishes a ban, or if a county establishes a ban, I can sort and filter by material, by state, by county. And it will pull all those delivery records that correlate with that request. All of our soil samples, analytical results for any sort of date range to help you identify any trends or process changes that might be occurring without your knowledge. I don't know if you have anything to add to this, Erica, but
it's funny, we all work in our own little departments, but we all seem to gravitate towards the same reports for the most part. Like me personally, the delivery detail report, I run that pretty much every hour of every day for almost all our generators. I know our accounting department runs the trucking cost reports on a daily, weekly basis. So it's funny, we all do the same. Our goals are all the same, but we all want different information from ORCHID. And the greatest thing about ORCHID is all this information is one spot, but we're able to all parse out what we need on an individual basis. And I think that makes RMI so successful, because April wants to look at something different than I want to look at. We have the ability to filter that and create a new report for whatever we want to see. So ORCHID is really nice with it houses all this information, but it's also really easy to get all this information out in a clean report system.
And even in prescribed reports. So like my DES reports, DEP reports, so any state reports, those require different information based on what state you're reporting to. So we just have reports built for each state because it's super easy to do that and to run it and to know that you're reporting exactly the criteria that that state is requiring. And the same thing for the site. If we want to see how our site's acreage has changed, I can go as far to see if there's any material left in the stockpile, so I can make sure that our stockpiles are compliant within the regulated timeframes that they have to be used up by. So yeah, there's tons of reports. It's really easy to generate new reports, and it's really the ones that we run. There are a variety of different ways you can run them to get different outputs, whether it's Erica wanting to look at something or me wanting to look at something different.
So some benefits of ORCHID. For a residuals management company, as you guys know, this is an ever-changing industry, and to be able to have an internal database that can grow and adapt with what the industry is going through is huge. As April said, we're able to add in any new data parameters that we need to. So in the age that is PFAS, to be able to implement those new parameters into our database in one click is huge. Back in the day, you would have had to sit there and input them manually one by one for every single generator. So it really is nice that we have a database that can grow and change with how we need it to do. It keeps all of our site, delivery, regulatory, and compliance information in one spot, which is really helpful. I couldn't imagine having to go to 4 or 5 different databases depending on what I'm looking for. If I had to go to a database to look at a delivery or a Salesforce opportunity or a work order, and then I had to go to a different database to look at, okay, what did we deliver? And then April's running reports out of an Excel spreadsheet for regulatory and compliance aspects. To have it all in one spot really streamlines our whole process. And now that we're on this new cloud-based platform, we have a very reliable platform. Previously, when ORCHID was starting to fail, we were losing information. We had reports that were crashing. We weren't able to add in new data parameters or anything like that. So now that we've been running smoothly on this new database for 2+ years, it's really nice to have confidence in the platform that we're using. And that goes in hand with providing accurate information about statuses of permits and compliance all around for all aspects of our company. So we're confident with what we're putting in the system, and we're confident with what the system is exporting us in order to do all of our permitting and compliance and reporting and billing. So it's the benefits of ORCHID are huge on our day-to-day business for RMI and just for how we can function as a successful company. So what is our future for ORCHID? We're currently working with Treehouse to streamline and finalize an electronic delivery record app for our drivers. This will be huge in us being able to get our delivery information the second it's unloaded at a farm, instead of waiting for a day or 2 days for the drivers to email it or mail it or drop it at the mailbox at our facility, about a half hour from where we are here. So it would streamline our entire process if we could have those electronic and sent into the office the second the drivers are done with that delivery. ORCHID also has the ability to create product value reports, and those really take everything that we've done from the work order, the delivery, the fertilizer value from the material we delivered them, and it prints it out in this PDF version right here. And it outlines that this site, Hanson Hilltop, received material on this field, and this is the material he received and how much we applied. And then it breaks down the fertilizer value by nutrients. So this is a great resource for our customers to fully understand what RMI is doing for them and how all this information that we gather from them in the beginning of the whole sales process doesn't just go nowhere. It's all housed in our database, and we're tracking all of this for them. Eventually, we'd like to have ORCHID have individual home pages and dashboards for each employee. So if April comes in and she wants to see, okay, what was the most recent material analysis I updated, she'll have that right there at her fingertips. And I would want to see, okay, where are my drivers today, and what are the dispatches that are coming up that I need to plan for? So that would be a huge goal, to have individual customizable dashboards for each employee. And then we're hoping to package ORCHID as a product that other companies can use. After 25 years of RMI using ORCHID, we see the value in it, and we think it could be utilized for so many other companies in the residuals management, or just any trucking company that has a compliance aspect to it. So we are working with Treehouse to try and figure out what's the best step forward on how to package and make ORCHID a product that other companies can utilize. And we didn't really get into any live demonstrations on what ORCHID does, but if anyone on the call is interested, April or I or anyone at RMI would be more than willing to sit down and do a live demo and actually put you through our system and show you how everything works and run some reports and all that actual function of ORCHID. So feel free if anyone's interested to reach out, and we'd be more than willing to do a live demo. And thank you. You guys have any questions?
Yeah, there is a lot to this. I don't know how you were going to do that in 20 minutes, but yes, there is a question to start. Does ORCHID provide prescription rates? For example, if you know crop N, the crop nitrogen needs, and know what the residual characteristics are, does it tell you how many tons of residuals can be land applied?
Yeah, so that's actually would come off of the agronomic recommendations. So all of the nutrient information for all of the materials we handle are in ORCHID. So when you're on the work order, if you pick wood ash, then those nutrient values for wood ash are what will come out on that ag rec, depending on how much material you want to land apply. So yes, you can, if you put all the numbers in, you'll get exactly how much you should land apply on those fields.
Yeah, and there's if there's new crops, so we used to just have hay and corn or grass and corn, and our farmers and clients are ever evolving, and they're starting to do different crop rotations and add in different crops that have different nitrogen needs, and there's also different residual nitrogen values based on those crops. So those are all built into ORCHID as well. That is not a section that we got really in depth on. But there are ways to do agronomic recommendations based off the crop need that's already in a data table in ORCHID.
Outstanding. Does anyone else have questions? There's a raise hand function at the bottom as well, if you want to raise your hand to ask questions. So how long has the 2.0 been in operation now? 2 years?
Just about 2 years. Yeah, we started the process with Treehouse back in 2017, 2018, and it took about 2.5 years to really get through the whole outlining and describing what we needed, and then the development phase. And then at one point for about 6 months, we were running both systems. So we were doing double data entry in each system to verify that the new ORCHID was functioning the way it should be. So we needed to have confidence that the data was inputting correctly. And so for about 6 months, we ran 2 databases. So we were glad that it didn't take longer than 6 months.
Let's see if we have, I think we do have another question. Erica and April, do you know how awesome you both are for our residuals recycling field? This was not a question.
I'm going to,
but I have to agree. Super awesome.
That with Sheila, maybe.
Yeah. No, it's great to have your energy and your brains looking at this. This is really valuable. I think could be helpful to others. All of that time that you spent developing this and making it so awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because like Sheila, she grew up in this industry, and so she developed this database that we use, and I can't imagine not having it. We had the server crash for like a week, and I didn't know what to do with myself because we couldn't put anything in ORCHID. So that was old ORCHID, but I don't know how. I give Sheila and Marty and Charlie a lot of credit for going through the beginning phases of all of this.
Oh, absolutely. So we do have a couple more questions. And I don't think you mentioned this, but do you have an estimated third-party cost for the software development?
We don't right now. We're in conversation with Treehouse Technology Group on the best way to do that. Because ORCHID is so customized to what we need that we're not really sure the best path forward, because not every company is going to want everything that we have and not going to need everything we have. So we're trying to figure that out.
Okay, good to hear. Also, Brian's asking, what platform is ORCHID developed in? Do you know what computer platform it's based on?
Is Chad, are you still here? Can you put that in the chat for us?
Yeah.
Or
if
I
not,
can
we
have
can
Chad
find that out for you. I'm not 100% sure. I know that it's cloud-based, but I don't know what software system they use to actually create it.
Okay, well, we can get that answer. I'll see.
Yeah, we can definitely find that out.
Okay. So that's all the questions in the Q&A. Give one more minute here to see if anybody else has any other questions. Obviously we recorded this and I'll send it out. I'll also want to send that link for the video because the volume didn't work, and I know why now.
Sorry.
When you share screen, you have to click a certain thing, but that's all right. No, we'll send it out with the recording because it looked pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
really cool. And how cool is it that the software company and the website developers that you're working with are dedicated enough to get in a truck and go to a field and unload the trailer that is hauling biosolids. So, and they've been pretty invested the whole time.
That's obviously why you got such a great system there. And another person's just asking for your contact information, which we will absolutely share, along with the recording and the slides and the link to that video and the answer to the questions that we couldn't answer. So
yeah,
not a problem. We'll connect all of you. Well, I think we can wrap it up. Thanks again, you two. That was awesome.
Thanks for
And you
having
did
us.
Thank
Yeah,
you
you
so
did a
much.
great presentation. Very
Thanks.
interesting, very challenging work, but very important. So thank you. And
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, thanks to all of you who joined us today. The next session is scheduled for March 25th, and we're going to dig into an emerging technology for PFAS removal from wastewater. It's called foam fractionation. And check out our events page because we have these lunch and learns lined up through June. And if there's something you're really interested in learning about, please email me. I can schedule a lunch and learn around it, and I'd be happy to do that. So let me just double check questions. All right. So thank you again, ladies. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a terrific weekend.